Do you hear that? Nothing, right? The eShop's one of the most deceiving parts of the Nintendo Switch, as this silent storefront is actually home to one of the biggest parties Nintendo's ever had. There are so many excellent games on the eShop, from definitive versions of old classics, to bizarre experiments you just don't see in the AAA space, to some of the best games that ever graced gaming. There are so many worthy of recognition, I feel like it would be a disservice to rank them, so instead we'll celebrate their greatest accomplishments. So put on your best dress and your most dapper tux, because it's time for an award show, baby! The eShop currently has more than 300 games, and sadly we don't have time to cover each and every one. This is just a week of Switch after all. That said, feel free to post any of your favourite eShop games missing from this video, and give them an award of your own. No room in the night sky comments though, we're on to you. So let's get started. Best Shooter, Graceful Explosion Machine. There have been so many takes on Atari's 1981 classic Defender, but none of them have been quite as groovy as Graceful Explosion Machine. Not only is it a sight to behold, but the core shooting mechanics and how it teaches you to flip between them on the fly is executed flawlessly. It's a lot like the PS4's Resogun in terms of pacing and scope, but I'd argue with more flair and over-the-top action. There are moments where the screen's completely packed with swarms of enemies, but you always have the tools to free yourself and blow them to smithereens. The game's packed with levels, but if you're a high score junkie, then you may never make it out with the first world. Every time you shoot an enemy, you initiate a combo, and if you don't blow another thing up within a few seconds, it falls back to zero. If you want the best score, you need a flawless run, all while avoiding oncoming shots. It still has the core pillars that made Defender so enjoyable, but it innovates and twists it to become something so much better than any other game in its genre. And now, best rhythm game, Thumper. No, this isn't a Bambi spin-off, though that would be terrifying. Thumper is not for the faint of heart. This is a hardcore rhythm game that may start off fairly easily, but it will gradually get so intense that you'll need superhuman reflexes to survive this rollercoaster of rhythmic death. And a rollercoaster is about as good as a comparison as any. You'll fear for your life as you reach the top, but as soon as your feet get back to the ground, you'll want to go on again and again. Word of advice though, wear a pair of headphones. The music in Thumper may not be as upbeat and catchy as other games in its genre, but it doubles down on the gameplay, and without instant audio cues, you'll probably find yourself crashing into a billion pieces a billion times. If you're looking for catchy tracks, then you're best off turning to other games like those, but there's no other rhythm game perhaps in existence as thrilling as Thumper. Next up, best puzzle game, and the award goes to Snipperclips Plus. The only Nintendo-published game on this list, Snipperclips was a joint effort between a small indie studio, SFB Games, and Nintendo themselves. And with the right people, this can be a lesson in team building and a haven for puzzle solving, though my fiancée just wants to kill me when I play with her. Hopefully she doesn't take any advice from Snip or Clip. You can play Snipperclips on your own, but it's not exactly advised, as the game truly shines when you're communicating with a second person and performing tasks in Unity. You'll end up looking at puzzles in a very different way, and I'm sure many of our solutions are completely different too. You may fashion your buddy into a spike to pop a balloon, or you may form their head into a scoop, or you might just jump around and hope for the best. Many don't have a single right or wrong way to go about them, and they're constantly changing up the fundamentals of what counts as a puzzle. It's rare we find games as stylish and intelligent as Snipperclips, and it's really no wonder Nintendo published it. There's even a 4-player mode where things get really hectic, and an expanded version with new puzzles in Snipperclips Plus. Best competitive game, and the winner is Rocket League. People like cars. People like football. It just makes sense. Rocket League has turned the online scene upside down since its original launch on PS4, and it's only gotten bigger and bigger with new modes, arenas, and extra perks. So not only do you get an insanely robust game on Switch, but you get to play it with your pals on Xbox One and PC as it features full online crossplay. That alone is incredible, but Rocket League also hands itself so well to the Switch. Sure, the visuals are downgraded, but being able to simply play a round of Rocket League wherever or whenever you want cannot be understated. It's games like this that really make me appreciate the switching aspect of the Switch, so it's not just the Samus car that makes me prefer this version over others, though it certainly helps. Next up, best budget game, and the winner is Earth Wars. Now, you may not have heard of Earth Wars, but let me give you some perspective. It's a $4.50 eShop game that costs $29.99 on other platforms. It's also called Earth's Dawn everywhere else, so I guess that's just an expensive name. Earth Wars is shockingly good for how low your expectations may be for the price. It essentially plays like a 2D Devil May Cry, with elements from Vanillaware's Muramasa the Demon Blade. You'll shoot and slash your way through beautiful environments and get your butt kicked by challenging bosses. There are problems like a confusing upgrade system and janky cutscenes, but for the value, you're getting an insanely enjoyable game out of this, and there's really nothing else quite like it on the system. Kamiko is also a great shout for this award, but with it being a whole 50 cents more expensive and offering less value, we'll have to stick with Earth Wars. Next up, Best Story. And the winner is Night in the Woods. Night in the Woods is simply phenomenal. It's a rare case in game design where narrative, world building, and interactivity all come together to form not only a well-written game, but a believable one too. And it all stars a bunch of animals. Don't be fooled, this is a very mature game featuring adult themes, deep emotions, and the struggles of entering adulthood, but it's all presented in this charming style that doesn't look quite like anything I've seen before. Even if your experiences don't mirror that of this struggling cat, you'll still be able to relate to her, and chances are you'll find a character that resembles yourself as a teenager, or maybe now in this incredibly strong supporting cast. The small town of Possum Springs almost becomes a character of its own, and if you love games like Life is Strange, you'll adore Night in the Woods. And now, best game from a major publisher, Sonic Mania. There was only one Sonic game last year as far as I'm concerned. Sonic Mania was not only a gracious return to form, but it's perhaps the most consistent and thrilling game in the entire series. Sure, it reuses a lot of ideas and stages from prior games, but it twists them so much that instead of delivering on expectations, it completely blows them away. That terrifying liquid and chemical plant, now a delightful jelly. Those rotating spikes in Green Hill Zone, now flammable. And the old stages aren't only better than ever, but the new stages are some of the finest to ever star in a Sonic game. Studiopolis and Press Garden Zone are visually stunning, and most of all, Mania understands the momentum-based gameplay of Sonic. It's not all about speed, and it's not all about set pieces. Sonic's platforming is so unique, and while Sonic Team may have forgotten why, the fans, the people who have kept this series thriving over the years, are the ones that truly understand Sonic. Sonic Mania is perhaps the best Sonic game ever. And now, best local multiplayer. And the winner is Overcooked. On your own, Overcooked doesn't have a great deal to offer you, but throw in 1, 2, or 3 other players and you have a remarkably excellent arcade-like cooking game. The premise is simple: manage and create orders and meet the growing demands of your customers. Things start to get hectic though, and you'll find out there's no such thing as too many chefs in the kitchen. You will need to communicate with each other and divide tasks, which gets even harder when stages start to move around and do everything they can to stop you. Overcooked may be the best example of local Joy-Con play on the system. The visuals are bold and large, which hand themselves so well to the Switch's smaller screen. There's also a brilliant use of HD Rumble, where you feel a distinct chop every single time you cut into something. There's plenty of great local multiplayer games on the Switch, but I don't think any of them top the intimacy and enjoyability of Overcooked. And now, most graphically impressive game. And the winner is Fast RMX. Sheenan are wizards, there's no other explanation. They've been crafting beautiful games on Nintendo's online stores for years now, and they somehow brought over their best one yet as a launch title for Switch. It's based heavily on the Wii U's Fast Racing Neo, but now in full 1080p, whereas it hardly hit 720p on Wii U. It's more than just resolution and effects though. Fast RMX is absolutely stunning, and each stage showcases a new environment with equally as much detail as the last. If you want a cheap game to show off your new Switch, then this is the one to go for. And it helps that it's also one of the best racing games on the platform and does a lot to scratch the F-Zero itch. It even has both local and online multiplayer, and did I mention that you can go fast in Fast? Like really fast? I'm sure the game's still beautiful, but I just cannot tell at this speed. Next up, best idea that shouldn't work, but somehow does. And the winner is Battle Chef Brigade. Battle Chef Brigade is a cooking game. There's also a match 3 puzzler, but the coloured orbs are actually ingredients that you hunt outside in a hack and slash free-for-all. It sounds weird, it sounds like these ideas shouldn't go well together, but somehow it does, and it's all told in a very deep story that had me interested from beginning to end. You play as Nina, who sneaks away from her family to compete in the Battle Chef Brigade tournament, but things are a lot more sinister than they first appear. You'll start off slicing and dicing simply to win, but as the game goes on, the stakes get a whole lot higher, and a lot less rare. So it's a story-heavy, hack and slashing, match 3 cooking game, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Biggest time sink, and the winner is Stardew Valley. Stardew Valley is the greatest escape. The game begins with you leaving your repetitive urban life behind and instead living it out on your late grandfather's farm. From there, you're not really given any guidance. You can explore, make yourself a home, and talk to your neighbours. You'll notice you have an energy meter, so there's only so much you can do per day. So you'll get into this constant routine of deciding everything you want to do that day and spreading it out across an entire week, month, or even year. Are you going to go down the mines and find materials? Farm? Wish Emily a happy birthday because she's the best girl in the village, you want to marry her? I mean, fish. Are you gonna fish? Find rare relics, or work out the story behind everyone surrounding you. What starts off as a quick 10-minute play session will somehow evolve into 5 hours, and even then you'll have a laundry list of things you want to do on your farm. Stardew Valley just doesn't end, and you'll always find something else you want to do. Next up, Best Definitive Version, and the winner is Cave Story Plus. Cave Story is the quintessential indie game. It basically kickstarted the entire field and was made by just one person under the alias of Pixel. You've most likely played it dozens of times before, and if you haven't, well, that's your homework for tonight. But if you have, then why should you still check out the Switch version? Well, Cave Story is so much better than it's ever been here on Switch. Not only is it now in widescreen for the first time on a console, but there are new quality of life improvements like being able to carry around a stack of dogs rather than just slowly dragging them one by one. And any game that lets you stack dogs is a good game by me. Then there's 2 entirely new soundtracks, an option to skip cutscenes, a co-op mode, which is huge, and so many more smaller additions that make this a must-have for not only Cave Story fans, but for anyone who's ever wanted to try the game. Beyond that, Cave Story is still Cave Story, which is to say, it's one of the best games ever made. And now we're getting towards the final few categories, Best Exclusive. And the winner is Golf Story. Golf Story came out of nowhere and putted its way into our hearts. It looks like Camelot are finally bringing back story modes to their sports games, but Golf Story went all the way in replicating the format of the Game Boy Mario sports games, and if anything, it went even further. You'll tour prehistoric courses, spooky haunted greens, and even hold off a swarm of zombies in this quirky, Earthbound-like tale. It's incredibly hard not to get sucked in when the writing is this good, and even when characters are static, the emotive text boxes give them so much personality. On its own, the golf is great, with variants like disc golf, mini golf, and other challenges, but it's when it comes together with the story and open environments that Golf Story really clicks. If you own a Switch, you need to try this game. It's been far too long since a proper golf RPG, and Golf Story knocks it out of the park. Hang on. Wait, that's baseball. It's a hole-in-one. Sure, it's a hole-in-one. Now, I did say I didn't want to rank these, but credit where credit is due. These 2 games are phenomenal. They're so good in fact that I think they're the very best titles on the eShop, and I love them both so much that I couldn't decide which was better, so I left it up to you, and you decided that the second best eShop game is SteamWorld Dig 2. The original SteamWorld Dig was a wonderful concept, but it hit a couple of rough spots on its way down the mine, and it was over before it really had a chance to leave a strong impression. SteamWorld Dig 2, on the other hand, not only addresses the criticism of the first game, but it addresses just about any criticism I could possibly throw at a video game. From beginning to end, the pacing is near flawless. It always knows when to launch you into a new environment or when to give you a new power-up. Like my favourite, the hookshot. Dig 2 might have the best hookshot of any game, and when it merges mechanics together, like maintaining your jetpack fuel by hookshotting to the ceiling, it feels very rewarding. Then there's an area that I still don't want to spoil because it's just so good, but anyone who's played this game will know the terrors and ambience of this particular area. SteamWorld Dig 2 is how you make a sequel. So, what's better than that? What did you guys vote for? Well, the very best eShop game is Celeste. While Celeste may look like a precision platformer in the vein of Meat Boy, it is so much more. Celeste is an emotional journey that explores the difficulty of accepting who you are. If you've ever suffered from depression, I implore you to experience this game. There are obvious elements like the story and writing, but then there's the visual metaphors and ramp up in challenge that aren't just beautiful to behold, but they complement the essence of the gameplay perfectly. Part of what makes Celeste so magnificent is it never really goes beyond the mechanics it teaches you in the first minute of the game. Sure, you get new ways to use them, but it thrives in its simplicity. So while you're making your way through some of the most daunting levels on the seaside, you're never doing anything you aren't prepared for. It's fair, it's tough, and it's beautiful. You can finish the story without a great deal of turmoil, but both the B-side and C-side levels are what keep you playing Celeste, though the story alone left such a strong impression on me. It's not just one of the best games on the eShop, Celeste is easily one of the very best games on the entire system. Platformers just don't get a whole lot better than this, and years from now, I think we'll look back on Celeste as a classic. Of course, there are so many more games to look at, and while I'd love to do this again sometime, why don't you let us know some of your favourite eShop games in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe to GameXplain for more on the eShop and other things gaming too. Catch you next time, bye.
Raise our sails, it's freedom like you